All right, today we're going to talk about lighting. This is actually a lot of fun because it's such an easy thing to fix. It's one of the biggest problems that we see with most amateur footage. And let's be honest, if you're watching this, we're probably talking about amateur footage. This is not professional level stuff. What we're looking for is to increase the quality through just some simple means. And one of the ways we can do that is with proper lighting. And there are two categories for proper lighting. That's my interpretation. Number one, we can use artificial lighting, so actual lights that we want to use to cast light on our subject. And number two, natural lighting. And I've talked about these a little bit before, but I want to dive in even deeper today and give you a couple examples of the differences that we're going to see when we use outdoor lighting options versus indoor lighting options. And we're going to talk about some equipment, of course. Now I'm going to go out on a limb here and guess that the vast majority of you are actually going to be filming inside, indoors. So I'm going to start with that. Let's just take an example of where I'm sitting right now and what this studio looks like. I've shown you some pictures and footage before, but one thing I want to be very clear about is that the way I'm sitting here, I'm facing the windows. And I've actually tried to set up or frame these shots in a few different ways inside of our home here. And really, I think this one's the best because I'm getting natural light from over here. It's an entire wall of glass. And I've got these kitchen windows over here, so I'm getting additional light through there. But I'm not relying exclusively on that. I actually have another light over here. And if we take a look, this is actually a very inexpensive light. And it essentially is an umbrella. So this thing just umbrellas out, and then we put this huge light bulb in here. As you can see, the inside of it is actually this foil-like reflective material. And that's so that all of the light is really focused forward. But it'd be really harsh on its own. So these come with what are called diffusers. So this just goes over it, and then what you end up seeing is a nice diffused overall even light. Now this one is very inexpensive. I'll be sure to put this one in the description, and you can buy them off of Amazon. Note that these are not what the professionals are using. I think these are like 35, 40 bucks typically at Amazon, whereas you can spend hundreds or thousands of dollars on professional drum lights like this that really let you control, number one, a whole lot more brightness from those, but number two, the color temperature. So we can go from a very cool temp to a very warm temp, just depending on what looks good based on the shot, based on the studio or the area where you're filming. Now I think these are fantastic because they're so inexpensive if you're gonna be shooting inside, especially if you have kind of a static studio setup, so you're always filming at your desk, or you're always filming on the couch, or you're always filming in a conference room. Setting these up and kind of leaving them in place can really save you a lot of headache and make it so that it's really ready to go as soon as you start wanting to film. Keep in mind, if you're in an office environment, I've mentioned this before, but relying on the lighting that you have in there is typically a very bad idea because it's straight from above and those fluorescent bulbs simply don't look good. You end up with all these really nasty kind of shadows and they're just gonna make you look bad. So what I typically do in those environments is shut all those lights off and rely exclusively on things like these lights. And in some cases, I've put as many as 4 in one shot, pointing just at me, the subject, in addition to maybe some corollary lights like spotlights that could be behind me pointing up to give more separation between me and the background, or just to help offset certain backgrounds like green screens that I've played around with in the past. Now, let's say you want to be more mobile than that. You can't carry these things around. They need to be in place. So if you're going to be walking around an office, walking through a manufacturing facility, if you're going to be even outdoors or at various locations, you want to make sure that you still have good lighting. And honestly, it's surprising how much or how often we feel like something's adequately lit because we can walk around and see, but on film, it's going to look totally different. You always want to have that little extra light so that you get those nice highlights and just a better overall clarity. The video quality or resolution is going to be affected by that. So let's talk about a couple of other options. I'm going to pull out my handy dandy mini tripod right here. We've talked about this one many times in the past. And by the way, if you haven't already seen the video where we talk specifically about tripods, check it out right here. Again, what I like about this setup, and this doesn't come with a tripod, this is a separate attachment that's for smartphones, is that it has that cold shoe mount on the top. So we can put our accessories in there. And this is yet another accessory that we can attach to a cold shoe mount. So this one happens to be a battery-powered LCD light. So you can see it's got these magnetic cases, so I can actually swap them. There's not a light in the back, that's where the battery goes, but it just allows me to swap. So I can either do the cool light from the clear, or I can do warmer light from the orange. Nice and handy. There are a couple of different kinds. These come in all different sizes, and there are different features that I'm going to show you here in just a second, but most of them are either going to run off like a AA battery, or they're going to be rechargeable, sometimes even both. In fact, I think I could put AA's in this one. Looks like it's also got a lithium ion in here right now that's rechargeable. So a lot of times you can just plug these in to a mini USB and charge them that way. All right, so let's just take this one, and again, you're going to see the shoe mount on the bottom, so it makes it nice and handy to just slide right in there, turn the knob, and that just tightens it down. Those of you who've been watching these videos, though, probably recognize the problem already. What is it? Yeah, we're already talking about using that shoe mount up top for one of our microphones. So if we need to use a microphone and a light, what do? Well, you've got a couple of options. If you're in this scenario, let's see. Let me pull this light out, for example. This one's a little bit different. If you take a look at the top and the sides, actually has its own shoe mount on 3 sides. So I can put this light in here, tighten that down, and then I can take one of my microphones and I could actually put that into the shoe mount right on top. Tighten that one down and boom, we're in business, right? So that's pretty handy. If yours doesn't have built-in shoe mounts, we've got other options. This is a handy little thing you can pick up on Amazon, and it's essentially a shoe mount splitter. So this I can just throw up here, tighten it down, and boom. Now I've got 2 mounts, so I can do microphone and I can do a light on this side. All right, so let's talk through a few scenarios related to lighting both inside and outside. And let's just start with where I am right now. As I mentioned, I've got windows in front of me, I've got windows beside me. It's plenty light in here under normal circumstances, but because I'm doing some close-up shots as the subject of these videos, I wanted a little extra brightness. So that's why I have one of these box lights right over here. Let's see the difference between on and off. Let's flip it off real quick. And back on. So you see the difference? I mean, it really would work either way, but there's just kind of a world of difference in that overall quality or feel having it on versus having it off. So let me walk you through a couple of other scenarios inside of our home and outside so you can kind of see some of the impacts related to being in front of a window with your back to it versus facing it, and being outside in the shadows and the sunlight and all of these other things that are going to come into play to determine the overall quality of the lighting in your shot. So now you can see that I've got my back toward the window, and luckily this is an iPhone, like one of the newest models, so it actually does a pretty good job with light, but you can still tell that the lighting on my face isn't nearly as bright as the lighting behind me. So this is going to result in kind of a lower quality overall because you don't see enough detail in my face or in the subject of the video. Now sometimes people might sit in front of a window, but maybe it has blinds or shades or something like that. And honestly, unless it's something like curtains that's going to make the light coming through the window really dark, it's not going to make a huge difference. It's amazing how quickly or how easily just a little bit of light that's actual sunlight coming through any kind of a crack in blinds or shades or anything like that is going to throw off the lighting of your subject. So this is challenging compared to when we turn around and I have my face facing a window. Now, one thing that can help in situations like this where you've got a brighter background is to just add some additional lighting to the front. And it's not going to be perfect in most cases, but obviously you see this stuff a lot in movies and commercials. So it is something that can be overcome, but the whole idea here is that we want to be able to do so simply. So no matter what your filming environment, if you want any kind of versatility, it's probably going to be a good idea to invest in some sort of lighting equipment, and it can be very, very basic. So what I'm going to do now is just flip on a little LED light, and you can see the difference. So certainly not perfect. This is on the brightest setting, and sometimes with these LED lights, you got to be careful about it creating too much of that sunlight effect where you really get a lot of overexposure in certain areas. But this is just one option we'll cover, and it's something where if you know you have to sit in front of a window, that is a window behind you or some sort of a very bright sky behind you, something like this will at least improve it enough that you can usually get away with it. So now I'm outside and you can see I've got direct sunlight. And in this case, at least it's coming from basically in front of me, although the sun is high enough that you can see it creates these really harsh shadows under my eyes, under my nose, under my chin. So part of me is very overexposed and part of me is very underexposed. Now, if I come over to the side a little bit, now you see how much additional problem a shadow can cause to the overall quality. So you want to make sure you've got something pretty even. So now outside again, but I've got the very bright sky behind me, and you notice I'm actually in a shaded area. So this is nice because I don't get the harsh light and shadows on my face, but at the same time, it's just like standing in front of the window because I'm relatively dark because of all of the contrast with the light behind me. Now this one's substantially better because I'm basically in the exact same spot outside, but this time I have my back to what is our home and the sky is out in front of me. So it's still not a perfect shot. I could definitely benefit from some additional lighting or an even better setup in terms of where I stand. But as you can tell, this is a pretty big improvement over the last shot where I have the bright sky behind me. Now, since it's not overcast today, I can't easily show you an example of that. But if you look at this footage that I took a couple of weeks ago, you can see the difference here. Again, it's not perfect. The marine layer was starting to burn off, but you can tell it's actually a much better overall even kind of light than when we have the sun overhead. All right, so clearly not all lighting's created equal, and that's true whether we're inside or outside. I think that a really good takeaway or general rule here is if you're inside, try to find some lighting that gives you a nice, even diffuse type of light that's pointed virtually directly at you, slightly off center, but nothing from the ceiling. That's not going to be helpful. And when we're outside, try to do it when it's overcast, unless you want to start getting into some secondary lenses for your simple camera that's going to help diffuse or block some of those UV rays, the harsh light from the sunlight. Above all, try to keep it simple. That's our rule for now because complexity is the enemy of execution, and we want to make sure that you actually get footage out the door, ideally on a daily basis, if not at least on a weekly basis. This is going to be key for business vlogging success. So stick with me. In our next episode, we're going to start diving into my process for actually shooting and making sure that we create some quality footage. And then we're going to talk about how to share that on the internet to help build our business. So I'll see you there.